Is it just me, or does Snowpiercer just sound like a rejected title for an unproduced James Bond film? I mean, that was literally the first thing that I thought when I first heard about this film. And the trailers actually made it look pretty good, and I was kind of thinking, oh, this looked kind of like a sci-fi blockbuster. Why aren't they giving this a wider release? Coming out of the film, I think I understand why. This almost goes without saying, but Snowpiercer is by no means a happy story. Thematically, it's a little bit similar to Apocalypse Now, as even though he's journeying further and further to the front of the train that looks more cleaner, more pristine, he's still journeying into the heart of darkness. And another thematic similarity I found is that it's also kind of similar to Elysium, since it also deals with the issues of classism, kind of how the people at the front kind of gave up a little bit of their humanity because they see the poor people in the back as something fundamentally other. And it also kind of tries to tackle the theme of what's done for the greater good, kind of Darwinism corrupted, is kind of what they're going for. But it only tackles that last idea with a very broad stroke. It's not explored particularly well. The film starts out strong, it has a pretty solid pace, but by the time we get to the second act, the film kind of simultaneously slows down / speeds up. It speeds up in the sense that it kind of bounces through a lot of the cars without really giving them much attention. Kind of like the writer thought, oh, well, they've got this many cars to go through, and so we've got to kind of get them to the front of the train because this film's already running on 2 hours. And it slows down in the sense that there's a few periods where not that much happens. It's not like for a long stretch of time, but there are a few lulls in the story here and there. Speaking of the story, it has a bit of a Saving Private Ryan aspect to it, because you see the cast of characters that follow our main character dwindle down over time, and it works in tandem with kind of the open-endedness of the conclusion, because it just makes you kind of wonder what was the point of it, and not in the I just wasted 2 hours of my life watching this sort of way, but more in the was it worth the amount of lives lost that our main character made it to the end sort of way. When it comes to the acting, we have top-notch performances all around, especially when it comes to Chris Evans' surprisingly emotional performance. Shows he's got a little bit more range to him than just Captain America. And even some of the side characters that don't even have names, they find a way to have them kind of exude personality in little tidbits here and there. I especially like the guy that had like the tattoos, and as he was holding the guard who couldn't speak English, he basically showed the tattoo to kind of show what he was saying. And it was a very small, subtle thing, and I really liked that. From a technical standpoint, the cinematography was a little hit or miss in my opinion, especially with the action scenes. And now I know shaky cam is a normal thing to have in action scenes nowadays, but I don't know, it just felt like there were a few times where either the shots weren't edited the right way, or the camera just wasn't focused on the right things at the right time. It just made some of the early action scenes look a little bit weird. Now, this improves later on in the film, but even then there's some artistic stuff both in the shots and in some overall set design that don't really make sense when you really think about the story, especially towards the end. Really hard not to talk about kind of the weirdness of the ending, but although they looked cool and may have made some sort of artistic statement, with the whole story and everything and stuff that we either are told and aren't told, they don't make a whole lot of sense. Overall, the film is a fairly thought-provoking, moderately heavy-handed piece of science fiction. Kind of reminds me of films like Ghost in the Shell or Mechanical Violator Hokkaido, which on the surface look like your typical run-of-the-mill sci-fi films, but then they kind of surprise you with some of the deeper themes that are covered. So if that's the kind of film you like, then I recommend checking this film out. And given that it's only being released in 2D by the Weinstein Company, you won't break the bank if you see this film at a matinee. That said, I give Snowpiercer a 3.5 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Tune in next week for my review of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. But until then, have a happy Independence Day.